Welcome to the Good Book Club podcast, where we make all our book club meetings available for viewers and listeners to enjoy. In this book club meeting, we discuss the book, The Art of Living a Meaningless Existence, Ideas from Philosophy That Change the Way You Think, by Robert Pantano. In this book, the author attempts to provide the value of motivation and personal development through unwavering philosophical honesty, studying and pulling from ideas in Stoicism, Existentialism, Nihilism, Absurdism, Buddhism, Taoism, and more. He combines his own thoughts with concepts from philosophy to create accessible, thought-provoking, and beautiful takeaways that will change the way you think about yourself, existence, and how to appreciate the absurdity of it all. This, the Good Book Club meeting, was originally held on Sunday, February 9th, 2025. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Good Book Club. It is February the 9th, Sunday morning, and it's Super Bowl Sunday, although we're going to call this Super Book Sunday, right? Because we're here and we're all about books, and we have an amazing book today and a wonderful presenter. We'll start out by reading our mission statement very quickly. This is the Good Book Club mission statement, and we always read this at the beginning of each meeting just to remind us of what we're all about. The Good Book Club was created to bring nuanced Mormons, post-Mormons, and others with a shared interest in Mormonism. We are introspective, critical thinkers seeking to learn, connect, and build relationships through the catalyst of literature. We welcome all who are searching for a safe space to share authentic thoughts, feelings, and ideas through open dialogue and shared experiences relative to Mormon culture. As we deconstruct previous beliefs, we encourage all to find happiness in the process of discovering new religious ideologies, spirituality, and life philosophies. And I have to say, this mission statement has been here with us for a couple years, and I think we do a pretty good job. I think we really are able to adhere to this statement, and it makes it really awesome for all of us. Let's very quickly talk about some upcoming information or events.
Hey, Rebecca, Karin joined us, so we didn't know you were going to be able to join us, Karin, since you lost your house. It is so wonderful to see you here, and we're so sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but I'm doing really well.
Okay, you'll notice that Karin's picture is looking really good because she has a 4-year newer computer that the village and the donors and stuff replaced a lot of the computer equipment for people who lost their homes. And Karin, your video looks so good with the new.
Do I look younger and thinner?
You do. I wasn't going to say anything, but you do. So for those of you that aren't familiar with our wonderful Never Mormon Book Club member, Karin, she's been with us for years, and we always kind of turn to her for like a reality check where we're talking about things in the post-Mormon world, and she's like, "Oh, you poor dears," she'll say to us. So we love that. And she's just our wonderful friend, and unfortunately lost her home in the Altadena fires. And it was even featured on CNBC, an article that I posted on our Facebook page. So we are so happy to see you. You do. You look wonderful, and we hope things are going well. Just welcome.
They are.
So glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. First item of business, our discussion leader for May is not able to lead the discussion anymore. Things come up. So this is The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity, and we need somebody to kind of lead that discussion, head that up. And that book is, again, like I said, May 18th. That's the date. If anybody's interested, put it in the chat. Text me, email me, message me. We're looking for somebody who can lead this because this is a fantastic book. Another thing that I wanted to make you guys aware of is, of course, we talked to Matt Harris, Second Class Saints, last month. Finally, the audio is going to be available on February 25th. I messaged Matt a couple days ago. I go, "When's that coming out?" He goes, "You're right. When is that coming out? I'm going to talk to my publishers." So he was able to get a hold of them. We found out February 25th, and you can also watch our discussion on YouTube from when he joined us last month. It was absolutely amazing. Another book I wanted to have on the radar, we've talked about it before, but now it's coming up closer and you can pre-order. This is the incredible Dan McClellan, The Bible Says So, What We Get Right and Wrong About Scripture's Most Controversial Issues. This is going to be coming out on April 29th, so about a month and a half, and you can pre-order it right now on Amazon. So this is already getting reviews, from the Christian community saying, "It's wrong," and other people saying this is amazing. So it's going to be a really interesting read. I want to point out that our book for next month, this is what are we in? March. This is cultish. This is going to be amazing on March 9th. And Jackie R is going to be our discussion leader. At the end of our discussion today, she'll be giving us a preview that once you watch this preview, if you don't want to read this book, there's something wrong with you. She ran through it with us a minute ago, and we're like, this is incredible. This is going to be a wonderful book. So all right. And now on to our book for today, The Art of Living a Meaningless Existence. And our discussion leader is the amazing Steph. And we've had a little preview of her slides and discussion. This is going to be really interesting. So take it away, Steph.
Okay, thanks. Give me a second while I share my screen. Let's see if I can get this. There it is. And okay, how is it on the slides? You guys good?
I'm good.
Okay. And we'll see. I'll try to manage the hand raising as well. We've already caught some spelling errors, so I'm a little bit laid back, and to be honest, I don't care that much. So we'll figure that out as we go along. So this was the book of the month. I guess I'll stop. I'll introduce myself a little bit. So my name is Stephanie. I was raised in Davis County, Utah, active Mormon family, did all the things. Got married super young, and then, spent the rest of my 20s and 30s kind of, I say, supporting my husband. I say that because I realize as I share life experiences, which may come up in this, I was a little embarrassed to recognize that I always mentioned my husband in every life experience I ever had. And I realized it's because up until I left Mormonism, I really didn't have my own story. So I've been developing that. And this book, I think, is just another step in doing that. So I'm excited. I am still married. I have 4 kids, and I'm a registered nurse. I do butts and guts. So 45 is the new 50. So if you haven't had your colonoscopy, it's time. So that's basically me. Oh, and I'm very excited and a little embarrassed about the preview for the next book, because I'm either proud or ashamed to admit that I actually coach CrossFit. So I know you're going to understand when you see the preview at the end. So it's shameful. I've traded one cult for another, but I think the other one's a little healthier. So I'm just going to stick with it. Okay. So this was the book of this month. I looked up quite a bit about the author, and he is kind of this cool enigma that there isn't a lot known about. But he does have this YouTube channel called Pursuit of Wonder, and their videos are phenomenal. I was extremely impressed that I mentioned this to my 17-year-old daughter, and she said, "Oh yeah, I know all about that. I've been watching that for a really long time." So everybody always has these doomsday perspectives of the next generation, and I'm thoroughly impressed with them. I think there's a lot of hope there instead of, I don't think they're all heathens. I thought it was awesome. Like, I was not watching philosophy when I was 17. Okay, so I think I just skipped. Hold on. Yep. I pushed too many buttons. I got excited. There we go. All right. So for this first slide, I just kind of took quotes because I felt like there was a lot that we could cover, and obviously I couldn't do all of it. So I'm just going to go through this really quick. Let's see. So science, religions, and philosophies often work to provide us with answers and clarity about the universe and our existence within it. So to start the discussion, I wanted your opinions on what answers did you have as a Mormon, or do you have now if you're currently an active Mormon? And how did that affect you? And what answers did you give up when you left? Or how have you changed those thoughts? So that's my question. Yes, Bruce, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, this question is exactly, pointed at me. Right after my mission, I'm gay. I got back from Chile. I knew the church was very toxic. I went to BYU in the late 70s, early 80s. They did not make you go to church and did not keep track if you went to church. And my father was my bishop. And so, as long as you kept registering for semesters, you didn't have to get an ecclesiastical endorsement. But my father would have given me one just to keep me around the church, because my parents knew I didn't particularly like the church. And so I went to BYU. I knew it was a terrible place because I would have probably ended up becoming unalive. But then for 30 years, I still believed the basic narrative, that there was a pre-existence, we're here, there's life after. I mean, up until I was 57, I was still occasionally praying, but I had nothing to do with the church. And then I found Mormon stories, and I was out visiting our family's trust attorney, and I was driving, listening to the Jeremy Runnels interview. And I'm going like, it just internalized completely. It's all bullshit. Everything is bullshit. That everything I'd thought about, the pre-existence, probationary life, life after death, it just all kind of disappeared for me. And so then that's why I'm so interested in this book club, is understanding how the world works. And, when Rebecca and Landon and I got together and then Melissa joined us, I mean, this book club is helping me figure out how the world works. So that's kind of my reaction to that first question.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Rebecca and then Landon.
Yeah, I think that the answers that the church provided us, and granted, I was raised in an era as a McConkie, Skousen, Bensonite, Mormon, but the answers kind of served to set me apart from the rest of the world. In school, you would hear one thing, but inside you knew, no, it wasn't a land bridge. It was a Jaredite barge, right? You knew these things. You had special knowledge from the church that set you apart from anybody else at school. Even your teachers, you knew more. You had it down from pre-existence to where you go later to how the world works via being a Mormon, right? And that's hard if you really internalize that, and that's part of your identity. And then you step away because then suddenly you realize, oh, the teachers and the other students were correct. Oops, and you're having to relearn everything. And then you beat yourself up a lot, I think, for even, how did I even believe that? How did I even think all of that? And you have to kind of grapple with that a little bit. But to me, those answers, and again, I was raised, in a very kind of controlled Orthodox environment. They really set me apart. And that was enforced at home too. You may learn this here out in the world, but we know how it really works, how it really happened. And this is the true answer. So it basically made me weirder than I ever needed to be, honestly, because I was living this whole different life and this whole different reality in my mind with all Mormon explanations and answers. And then that explodes, and then you find out what's really happening in the world. And I think that leads to a lot of curiosity, and also the sense that you have to play catch up. And that's another reason why this is a testimony meeting about the book club, but a reason I appreciate it so much, because what other people spent their life exploring and learning, maybe discarding, maybe embracing, we just had this one very set way of looking at things. So everything we learn here in book club and everywhere, you now have the opportunity to say that resonates or not so much. So I appreciate just the freedom now to study and learn whatever the heck I want, right? I should apologize to my teachers. Because I was very smug. I thought I was much smarter than they were, that I had it,
I love it. There's a transition, there's a grieving. It's easy to know. It's kind of easy to be told all of your answers. This is the way the world works, and to accept. And we're going to touch on that idea of freedom if we get to it later. Landon.
Yeah, I think I grew up knowing everything. I mean, we were taught the church answers all of life's questions. It taught where do we come from? Where are we going? Why are we here? They always seem to have an answer for everything, and everything, if you just followed the gospel, it had an answer for every one of life's questions. In fact, I think we were all taught, if there's a question that you have, the gospel will give you an answer. And even if it doesn't say it right in the scripture, you go to the temple and you pray about it, and God will give you an answer to it. So, under the LDS belief, I knew everything. But what I appreciated about this book, I did notice there were a lot of Eastern Europeans that were philosophers, a lot of Germans. So it kind of made me appreciate the great philosopher, Colonel Klink, who said, I know nothing. That's how I feel now. I know nothing. But it's all right to know nothing. It's fun. And this book kind of made you realize you don't have to know anything. It can be completely meaningless. You can find meaning. And I think that's one of the things I really learned from or thought about as I read this book was that we need to give meaning to our existence somehow. And I realize now that that's what the church did. It gave me meaning to a meaningless existence. But I don't have to take and just follow that meaning. I can look now and say, oh, a lot of these philosophies resonated with me. And I can now say, I like that philosophy, or I'm going to explore that philosophy. And even though it doesn't have better answers, it has it's all about just me, finding me. I'm one little insignificant thing, but to me, I'm the most important thing. So find myself, and that's what matters. I don't have to follow these other people who say they have the answers and that taught me that I had to become something other than my true self, because that's what I felt like once I got out of Mormonism. I said, oh my gosh, there's a whole guy in there that wanted to get out but never did because he stayed within within the parameters he was taught. And now I'm free to bust out of those parameters. So
Good for you. I dare say it is a very difficult challenge, though, to, at least for me, not feel like I'm selfish for embracing that pursuit of self and my own thoughts. That's a hard bridge, to cross. You guys are the best, like, elders quorum relief society group ever. You're just right on point. So we're gonna go on to the next slide. Let's see. Okay, instruction manual. There is, in fact, no one size fits all prescription or cheat sheet or instruction manual to life, and there is likely no ultimate circumstance, idea, or thing that will make life's uncertainty, pain, and chaos go away. So, the obvious thing I thought of is, like you said, Landon, that we're given scriptures and sometimes it's conference talks. And I don't want to throw, out the baby with the bathwater. I have to admit there are times in my life where I was searching for answers and I did find them in the Mormon way. An example I have is when I was in my late 20s, and it doesn't matter. I was in my late 20s. I just had my third baby. I was at the gym. I sat up and felt a pop in my right ear and heard immediate ringing. I had this really loud tinnitus, got consistently more dizzy. So ironically, we had to feed the missionaries that day. And so I was so dizzy. I remember I had to lay like on the wall, to get from my bedroom to the kitchen so I didn't fall down. Anyway, after seeing several doctors, one of them pulled me into a little room and he just looked at me and said, you have sudden sensory neural hearing loss. You just have randomly gone deaf on your right side. And he said, we don't know what causes it. And he literally, it was funny because he's like, he's Jain. He's an Indian, Jain is his religion, but he just said, it's an act of God for all we know. So I, really went deaf, and there's a lot of things that are difficult with that. Losing one of your senses is an adjustment. But I do remember that, I was very distraught and did go to General Conference. And I remember President Eyring giving this talk where he kind of lamented about a daughter of his that lived far away and was having health problems. And I was going through that with my own family. So even though there are some of these negative things that come from this doctrine, in fact, mostly negative, I feel, I don't want to say that there can't be answers where people look. I think you can find goodness in anything, but for me, I don't think that there is one true scripture that is going to answer everything. Bruce, how about you?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because much of my sense of how I interact in the world comes from my Mormon upbringing. I mean, the concept of home teaching, looking after your friends and doing things, I still find that to be what gives me validation in my life. And then I go back to the concept of, okay, what was a valid teaching? And it just boils down to the beginning and basis for everything is the golden rule, reciprocity. doing unto others as we would have them do unto us. I think that's a very good base. You don't need handshakes. You don't need secret passwords. You don't need to disembowel yourself. You don't need to slit your throat. All this stuff that I agreed to in 1976 in the temple. But starting with the golden rule, and then again, my kind of basic concept here is, how does the world work? It's very different than what I was brought up with. So from religion, I think the golden rule was something that I have internalized and kept. And then how that plays out within my family and friend. I looked after my parents, who were very unhappy with me until they died, because that seemed the right thing to do, and I was going to inherit a lot of money. But those are things that we're all weighing in on it. But yeah, the golden rule is one of the things that I think religion, and I think it's far beyond Christian religion. I think other religions have that as a basic teaching, and I think that's a good foundation.
Excellent. Jackie.
Yeah, I was going to say that, well, I was raised LDS, not super active, but we were given the opposite of this. We were taught plan of salvation. That's it. Here's the plan. Here's what you do. Everybody does this, and everybody will have this outcome. And to get away from that is absolutely opposite of where we've all experienced since we've left that behind, for those of us who have, or those of us who are struggling, because it's just, we had a plan, and if you followed it, then you got to this destination. It was like a roadmap. So it's the actual opposite of what this idea is.
Absolutely. Anybody else on that one? I think we're good. Oh, Landon.
Yeah, I was just going to say that was the one thing though about Mormonism is, they always had the answers. They always gave you the roadmap, but it was the same roadmap for everybody. There was only one way. There was no option to be yourself or to have any individuality. And that's been the thing that, life is chaos, life is uncertainty. Everyone reacts differently, and everyone should be free to act differently. And so that was the one thing, although it gave you this roadmap that you followed, everyone followed the same roadmap. And I found that all Mormons I know were almost all the same. We all did exactly the same. I mean, you were just describing, I got married young, I had babies, we all did that, because that was the roadmap they gave us. And so it's been so exciting as I've gotten out of the church to see people who have followed different paths and to see how those paths ended up. That to me is really unique and amazing, as I see, oh, this person followed a different path, and look, they're sometimes they're weird to people, sometimes they're really just unique people, but they're so fun to be around because of that. They're different than everyone else. And I've really appreciated that now as I've got to meet people who took a different path.
Love it. Yeah, you don't have to follow the exact instructions. Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. So kind of along the lines with what you were saying, that people are different. I appreciate you kind of bringing up the idea that everybody's the same, because that is very, very true. If you're lucky enough to follow the path, but heaven forbid you be a 30-year-old and be gay or unmarried, and then there's no path for you in that dogma, right? But the truth is, right, we don't know. At the base of almost everything, the resulting truth is this: we don't know. We don't know what I cannot spell. I'm sorry. Consciousness is, time, gravity, infinite universes and dimensions, why energy or matter, purpose or existence. I think I have a touch ADD. I get really involved in these slides, making the little hearts and stuff, and I don't spell check. So, it's all fine. Anyway, forgive me for that. I'm much better at the cutesy stuff. But for me, my Mormon story is probably, or my life has been a little bit determined by some overlying trauma. I think we all have that. But I felt like I was caught between these two roads, right? So I did get married young in the temple, and we were doing all the things. But when I was 21, yeah, I was 21, and I was 5 months pregnant with our first child when I spoke to some of you about this earlier, when the Trolley Square shooting happened. And that'll be the anniversary of that is coming up in a few days. And that's hard for me because my husband was a rookie police officer at the time. And so I heard it on the radio. I got a call at about, I mean, that happened, I think, in the evening around 5 or 6. He called me around midnight and said, I'm alive and I'll come home when I can. And that was it. And that started our journey through, he already had some trauma going into that we didn't know about, but that brought on full-blown, really bad PTSD that just escalated over the next 10 years. And I felt so caught because I was doing all the Mormon things. I was praying, I was trying to go to church, but I would look around at all these other sweet little young moms and go, you have no idea. You're not dealing with murder. You're not dealing with, this suicidality and all these other things that came along with that. And I felt so othered. I felt like there was no path for me. So I do feel like the thing that has been nice about leaving is, like you said, Landon, there is this path for everyone, because I feel I tried so hard to find that Mormon path, to cling to the scriptures. But the truth is, it didn't give me answers in those huge events that I needed. There was no answer. I tried, the temple, all of that, but sitting in the celestial room did not take away the suicide, like it just didn't. So, anyway, that was a long drawn out story, but I think it's a gift now to accept that we don't know, because it opens up this whole arena of new thought, of new life, of new process. So I was curious if any of you have had problems with accepting that you don't know, where if you were in the church, you were always taught exactly what to know. So has anyone had any issue with that? Or how do you deal with the not knowing?
Oh, I didn't get my hand raised. Sorry, Bruce.
No problem.
I was just going to say I've actually found exactly the opposite. I always felt like in the church that because there was an answer, that I always had to choose the right answer, like that there always was a right answer. And now when I realize there isn't a right answer, now I feel more confident that I can just pick the best answer. And if it's wrong, there's no eternal punishment. There's nothing, there's no consequence other than, well, that ended up not so good. And maybe it was still a good decision, but it just didn't end up good because circumstances changed that I couldn't tell, but it was the best decision I could make at the time. So for me, it's relieved a lot of the stress I had with making decisions, that I'm not, doing something that's going to condemn my soul forever because I made a decision that was different. And also the church always told you, listen to the Spirit to make decisions, but then you'd make a decision you thought was right, and they'd say, no, that's not right. You didn't listen to us. You didn't do what we told you to do. And so you were always second guessing yourself. Now I don't so much second guess myself. I just go, well, that's the best decision I can make, and I'm going with it. So for me, it's been a little freeing.
I love that. I think, was it Bruce next and then Rebecca?
Yeah. This concept of, understanding better how the world works, that like at the end of life, that's it. It goes back to what I understand is what my life was before I was born, which I was just, molecules and energy in the world without a consciousness. And I'm going back to that. And I've embraced that. I'm fine with that, because it's like going to sleep and you don't know what's going on. And I don't think there's any other option. And I've sat with people, I sat with my mom when she died, I've sat with other people as they were dying. And, they were very old and just, they'd experienced a pretty good life, and there wasn't fixing them. There was no fixing their physical and mental disabilities. So there wasn't any like thinking, oh, this person will get better. And it's probably a good option just to end the existence, and then thinking that the existence is just this miraculous thing. Who knows if there's other people or other beings like us in the universe? Probably, because the universe is really big, but I don't believe they've, come around and visited us. I don't think that's the case. But yeah, just kind of internalizing that has helped me. And that's my thought.
That's great. Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah, I was also going to touch on end of life, because to me, that is one of the biggest reliefs that I have experienced on the other side of Mormonism, because I was always really concerned about that. Even though we all knew what would happen next, I didn't like what I was hearing. It sounded very stressful. Being judged, a movie of your life being shown, right? I don't know how many of you grew up with that, but I did. That, we'd all sit down, everybody would see everything that you did. You may or may not be with your loved ones. I was raised by a family that very much promoted the idea of polygamy. They were super on board. They were not polygamous, but, I would be with someone who had otherwise. Bottom line is, dying in the next life was extremely stressful for me. I did not like the idea of it. And I didn't realize till after the fact that I had a lot of anxiety about it. Stepping away from Mormonism and realizing that whatever comes next, if there's anything, if there's nothing, it's not going to be what I was raised with. That was an extreme relief. And I do remember thinking, well, I do believe that there isn't anything next. How will I, when I put that to the test, when someone I'm very close to dies, how will I feel? And that happened this last year. Both of my parents passed away within 4 months of each other, one expected, one unexpected. And I was there at that moment each time. And I said, okay, I tend to be a little scientifically minded. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. Let's see how I react, right? And I didn't have any of this, like they say, oh, the scared atheist, right? The fearful atheist, the unknown. No, I just felt like here's someone who has had a life, and now, they're not alive anymore. And whether or not anything is next, whatever they believe, of course, I had family members, they were going, go to the light. Don't you see grandma, and I was just standing there going, yeah, no, but I felt completely comforted. I was not stressed out. I was, able to mourn and grieve in a normal way, because sometimes I feel that assurity of the next life, people don't do that. They're just like, oh, he's fine. He's dead. He's doing missionary work. There it is. Case closed. That's not a healthy thing. So for me, especially end of life, which is one of the bigger questions that everybody grapples with, I felt complete peace and assurance about it. Even when I think about my own mortality, I'm like, there it is. It's okay. So, and I know not everybody is like that, but I think just because the next life was taught to me when I was growing up in such a different way, it caused a lot of anxiety and stress. And now I don't have that. So that's a positive thing for me.
Yeah, I like that. I'm glad you bring up the positive. I'm going to go to the next slide. It kind of has to do with that same thing of dealing with the not knowing. I think for me, the not knowing forces you to face acceptance or not. I know, like with my hearing loss, my husband, bless his heart, was heartbroken that I was suddenly disabled. And so his response was, well, I'm going to give you a priesthood blessing. And in his heart, he thought I was going to be healed. I, for some reason, just kind of had already accepted it, that the hearing was gone and I had to learn to deal. And, but man, that messed him up. That really messed him up, that not being able to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly of life as just part of living and part of our existence along, I think if you can't accept the not knowing, it makes it really hard to embrace the good things. And I kind of feel like, in a way, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but I feel like I was probably stunted when I was in that place where I knew the path. I knew, all the little details. It really stunted my growth, I think. And I feel a lot better now. We'll go I'm actually going to skip this one. Okay, so this concept of awe. I think after we figure out that we know nothing, it's kind of like, well, then what are we going to bring into our lives? And I very much resonated with this concept, especially the description where they, of something that's a catch in our voice or the faint sensation as if it's a distant memory. That to me absolutely sounded like what we would have described as the spirit, spiritual experiences. And I think there is a place in life, in humanity, for these feelings of awe, for these feelings of the spirit, whatever you want to call it. It seems to be a universal experience and even maybe a universal need. So I wondered if you agree or disagree about if this is similar to spiritual experiences, and how, if you have changed your thoughts about Mormon doctrine and have come out of it, how do you reconcile what you view as spiritual experiences, and how do you pursue that in your life, maybe in the future? Jackie and then Bruce.
I have to unmute.
There you
Okay.
go.
This really resonates with me. When I was a young teenager, my whole life I was involved in Girl Scouts, and every summer I would go to Girl Scout camp, and I would do a lot of camping with my friends, and we still get together. Anyway, one summer, my bishop said, if you don't go to camp, then we'll give you your Young Women's Medallion award. And I was like, no, because going to camp was where I got this awe, to look at the stars at night, to be up. It's a camp above Park City, up at Bonanza Flats. It's beautiful. It's got a lake, and to just be there in the quiet and the trees and the colors. And I was like, I'm not sitting in the church on a pew did not give me that sense of awe and let me find my place in the cosmos. So I've always felt a little bit more about there was better way to get that sense than being in a building. And so, yeah, this always has resonated with me.
I'm impressed you recognize that at such, it seems like a young age, that's very mature. Way to go.
Yeah, well, I never got my young women's medallion, but that's okay.
Rebel. Little rebel. All right, Bruce, you're next.
Yeah, the spirit was always something that really confused me when I stepped away from the church, because when I was a missionary, I was trying to be good and stuff like that. And I felt the spirit. It was just this kind of warm feeling that was confirming whatever I was working on or doing was good. And I was told and interpreted that. But then when I stepped away, I still had that feeling. Like when I was dealing with my parents, I ran their family business on the side and looked after their interests and stuff. And I would have those spiritual feelings like, okay, yes, as I would be driving out the 70 miles to their house, I would have what I would call a spiritual feeling. And what always confused me is, how do I have that when I spent the evening before at a gay bathhouse? Obviously something that Mormonism taught me was wrong. And then I'm feeling the spirit the next morning, and it just always confused me as to what was going on.
I think that's absolutely fair. I've had similar experiences, and I think it was interesting that my children were really tiny when we went to this fundraiser, and it was for kind of a military thing. And so we were still the sweet little, Mormon family at the time, but the alcohol was free flowing. And we didn't drink, but of course they're all tatted up. The language is a little crass, but my daughter looked around and said, I feel more comfortable here than I do at church. These are my people, because they were so loving, just such loving, kind, fun people. It didn't matter. It was still that spirit, that awe, that community, that feeling was still there. So thank you for that. Landon.
I was just talking, or I think I was talking to Rebecca about this earlier in the week. And, Joseph Smith talked about Kolob, if you could hide a Kolob. And I think he said Kolob's like just hiding behind the sun or something like that. It's very close when you consider the universe. And it just shows that Joseph Smith had no idea how immense the universe was. And of course, he couldn't unless God showed it to him, which he claims, but his understanding was that of someone in 1830. He had no idea the immensity of the universe and how far it went. And I was talking to Rebecca when I read that the Voyager spacecraft had just reached what's called, I think it's called an AU, an astronomical unit, which is it's a solar day away. It takes 24 hours for the sunlight of the sun to get to Voyager. It's gone that far. But then they said if it continues at the same speed that it's going now, to get to the next closest sun, it will take 76,000 years for it to get to the next star. And that's the next closest star in our galaxy. And our galaxy is made up of like a trillion stars. So a trillion stars spread out in such a way that 76,000 years to get from one to the other, and there's a trillion of them. You just sit and go, this is just completely mind-blowing, inconceivable, the miracle of all of these, galaxies out there, galaxy upon galaxy. To me, that is more amazing than it's easy to say, oh, well, a God took and made, some intelligent creature. Tell me how an intelligent creature makes something that immense and that huge and can control that. I mean, it just blew my mind. And so it is. It awes me. And I go, I say the same thing as I think someone just said, Carl Sagan said that the universe is more than we could ever imagine, or I can't remember what they said here, but it's completely true. Yeah, we don't need myths or supernatural stories to feel wonder or awe. Just look at the universe. It's there. Just those little stories as you contemplate how big and how massive a black hole is, that an entire solar system will fit within a black hole and still be the black hole's 100 times bigger. And you just go, oh my gosh, this is so awe-inspiring. So, and I don't know, I don't understand it, but it's awesome to contemplate.
I love it. I think you have to be okay accepting the vastness of that. On the pessimistic side, I think you can get to that, what is the existentialism, where if everything is that vast, then maybe we're super insignificant. So I love your attitude that you're able to embrace the novelty and the awe of all of that and not, view it in a negative light. Bruce.
Yeah, you're talking about Carl Sagan, the cosmos, and Voyager. If you look on Netflix, there's a documentary on Voyager having, gone the furthest man-made thing. And when it got out to that kind of leaving whatever the influence of our solar system is, they turned it back and took a picture of the Earth, and it was just one blue pixel. And I was sitting there, Carmen and I have a friend group, Pasadena Village, and I run the men's group, and we were sitting there. And when we were talking about that documentary, and I said it was so neat that they got all the old scientists. And our friend group has a whole bunch of old scientists from Jet Propulsion Laboratory and Caltech. And the guy sitting next to me goes, well, they didn't include all of us. And Karin, it was Ed Renderly, was a mathematician on the Voyager project. And so in our friend group, we have people who, they're all retired now, but who worked on that. And when you take a look at, we were that one blue dot, and this man-made thing, went so far away, and the universe is immense. So yeah, it's amazing to think of these things.
That's really cool. That's interesting. Joe.
Yeah, I went I spent about a year and a half just going to every stinking park in Utah because I came to that realization that there is nothing else. So I need to make sure I understand this world. And it made me mad that the belief in Hogwarts, that it's better than anything here, was taking away that beauty. Meaning, I was robbed of all that because I was waiting for the next beauty to come and I was ignoring the current beauty. And it's so precious. I don't know. I just got into that mode.
I love that. I second that completely. I wonder often if this, like you said, seeking for the next big thing. I know in the last conference, and I have a lot of friends that are still talking about, the second coming is near. We've been hearing that for lots and lots of years. And they're waiting for this next big thing, to fix everything. And in a way, I wonder, or I have felt, is that suicidal ideation instead of living your life now, seeking the awe in the moment? You're waiting for this next big thing to suddenly make everything better instead of accepting that you don't know and you're just going to live your best life now. One last thought on that. I don't know if you guys have seen, it's not as complicated as the universe documentaries, but it's actually the one with, I can't remember the guy's name, but he plays Thor and he's super pretty, whatever his name is. Anyway, it's on Disney Plus, but he goes through it's like longevity and like how to live a long life. But at the end, they do this fascinating episode where they run him through these exercises where psychologically you're mimicking your own death. And it's pretty good, but I love that he is this very pretty man who has this cute little family and this wealth and all these things. And that exercise, he said, all he could think about when he was contemplating his own, demise and even his existence was just loving the moments of sitting on the couch with his children, just watching a show. That it was as simple as that. It's as simple as nature. And it's simpler than we think. It can be vast, it can be simple. So it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing to exist, I guess. Okay, nobody else will go to the next one. Okay, so I really wanted to put this one in because I feel like Mormonism breeds extreme, debilitating worry and anxiety. I have never met a group of more perfectionist, depressed, and anxious, bless our hearts, individuals now that I look at it. And I actually disagreed with this statement. That no one really cares, and that, I really can't spell. Sorry, that's obvious, not obvious. Anyway, examining how often we think about others. And they were saying in the book, it was kind of saying that really we don't think about others that often. And so we don't sit and think about what they're thinking of me that often. So we shouldn't worry about what other people think. Does that make sense? But I will say, I feel like I was completely taught the opposite because my existence as a Mormon was worrying constantly about what other people were thinking, because the people around me were going to be the source of my salvation or deeming my worthiness or, just my value, how I performed as a primary president, whether or not I hurt someone's testimony or, was representing Jesus or all these things. I thought constantly about other people and worried about what they thought of me, not be out of self-absorption, but kind of out of my eternal survival. So I wonder if anyone else has that same high anxiety experience that I had. Anybody have that? Any experiences with that? Surely I cannot be alone. I know some of you are crazy, anxious people too. All right, Rebecca, thank you for.
No, I don't think that. I don't. You're not alone. It's true. And I really feel, especially here in Utah, where I've spent, I grew up in Washington State. It was actually quite a hive of Mormonism. There were quite a number of Mormons there. And then, the rest of the time in Utah, and you're in a hive, you're on top of each other. You see the same people every day. You're all in the same kind of circumstance almost. And I think you just tend to always judge yourself compared to them. And then there are people that are like actively judging you, and they'll come out and say it. So it's an interesting microcosm. I know it probably does exist in other congregations and other denominations where the people just see each other, and you have this code that you have to live up to. You have these expectations that are written down, that are told to you over the pulpit, general conference, everywhere. And it's just human nature to say, oh, look at them, And I don't know that I noticed it so much. I knew I had anxiety over it, but I was fine until I had kids, and especially had a kid that was a little alternative. I mean, not even really alternative, had slightly longer hair. And to see how this kid, 20 years ago was treated in the ward, with people actively, censuring him and telling him to get a haircut. Somebody gave him a note to take home to me to get a haircut, and this still causes a lot of problems with this particular child, who was judged in such a way. He's just has not quite been able to get past that. It's actually kind of heartbreaking to see what has happened just because of that. But I think you're just so on top of each other, and you have this list of do's and don'ts, and you're going to watch each other, and you're going to be anxious about whether someone's going to be watching you. Talk about, sneaking off to the grocery store on Sunday, right? In a Mormon centric population, I would always put, and I've said this before, a box of tampons in my cart in case somebody saw me, who, they'd be sinning too by going to the store, but I could say, oh, emergency. That's how aware I was of people perhaps judging what I was doing by being at the store on Sundays. So I don't know if anyone else grew up in heavily Mormon centric area like that, but for me, it was a real thing. And especially for my kids.
I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's absolutely true. I forgot to add, I think there's also the element of family. We're defined naturally, instinctually by what our parents think of us. That's our identity. And so there's also that anxiety of, you are constantly worrying about the approval and what your family, and if you leave Mormonism and your family's Mormon, that's a thing too. But let's go to, I want to say this right. You say it Melissa, right? Not Melissa, Melissa, and then Jackie.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about family too. I think, especially as you leave the church, my parents blamed themselves. They didn't teach me enough. They didn't teach me right. I was talking to a friend last night who said her husband blames himself because she left. And so we're like trying to be like, we're kind of feel responsible to bring everybody, so there's no empty chairs, and we feel responsible for making sure everybody gets there, and for, especially our kids. And so there's just so much kind of pressure in all of those things. And I was the oldest child, so you got to be like the Nephi character who's, bringing the layman's and the liminals along. Like, there's just so much pressure in all regards to be an example, to make sure that nobody leaves. And there's just so much pressure, because obviously people leave all the time, and there's just but you take that on yourself, and it's really kind of toxic, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And life is hard enough without that added pressure. Jackie, and then Landon.
Yeah, we were raised with that idea of perfectionism, and that is, it's always been known that Utah has the highest rate of women on Prozac and kids on Ritalin and all of that, because it's such a high perfectionist thing. You have to be perfect in how you get to church. Your children have to look perfect. Everybody has to have their Sunday smiles on when you walk through the building. You also have to think about the afterlife, because if you're the one that messes that up, then if you're the one that goes astray, and now the whole family won't be together in the celestial kingdom or whatever kingdom. So we are constantly under pressure, and everybody does look at everybody else and say, what are you doing? How are you developing your talents? What are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Are you going to church enough? Or do you take seminary? I mean, I think it's very much everybody looks at everybody else and judges, and that's just what I think. So,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I want to call out my brother-in-law joined the book club today in support, so I won't make him talk, but I think he has taught me a lot about like this worry and this anxiety with it extending into other areas of your life. Like, how you show up as a father or a husband, especially with men, how much money you make, how you act in your career, and how that affects your mental health. So the perfectionism in going to church, but just that pressure to perform and be perfect in every single decision you make on a daily basis. Anyway, Landon and then Bruce.
Yeah, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this book, and that I really took away from this, and I've learned over my lifetime, is that first sentence is just so important. No one really cares. Once you understand that, it is so freeing. I mean, I sit at work and there's people there who, 30 years, 40 years they've been with the company. They're putting their life into it, and then they're going to retire, and you go, man, that's a big hole that we're going to have to fill. And the guy retires, and 2 months later, someone else is in there doing the job, and no one even remembers the guy that was there 30 or 40 years. And when you start realizing, it's really not that important, we're really doing it just to make a living. You're not changing the world in almost anything you do. And once you realize that no one really cares, then you start saying, well, the only person who really cares about what happens to me is me. And then that gives you the permission that you talked about earlier, where you said, oh, I feel selfish or whatever when I start thinking about that. But when you realize you can do all these nice people, and in the end, almost nobody really cares. When I left the church, I was the young men's president, I was in bishoprics. I left the church and no one ever came and talked to me again. None of my neighbors stopped by. I mean, it was like I left and everything changed, but nobody seemed to care that I was gone. So once I realized nobody cares, then it gives you that freedom to say, well, then let me look and see what it looks like if I just think about what does it matter to me? What if I do what's best for me? That makes a huge difference in your life.
I love that. So wise. I kind of want to be more like you and let stuff roll off me a little better. Like, that's awesome. Bruce.
Yeah, Rebecca was talking about being judged, putting tampons in the cart. And when I lived in Utah, while I was at BYU, that's the only time I've lived in Utah. I can remember, I was totally inactive. I didn't wear my garments, but if I wore a dress shirt like to class, I would wear a V-neck t-shirt underneath it. So it looked kind of close to what garments were. But at the gym, I wore regular boxers, and, I would change, and because nobody really knew me because it's so big. But then when my mother died, I spoke at her funeral. I spoke at both my parents and my brother's funeral as, a totally inactive and or non-member. And I wore a blue shirt with my suit. And I had 12 of my friends go to my mom's funeral. And I explained to them that I was giving a big fuck you to everyone by being up on the stand of the chapel that my father had built when he was a bishop. This was when it was like member built chapels. And I was wearing a blue shirt with my suit. So I was then taking the opportunity to signal, yeah, I'm not one of you. And I gave the eulogy, and I ended it, instead of the traditional Mormon ending, I just said, my mother will be missed, and sat down. And, my cousins were there. My nieces and nephews and some of my cousins were there. It was very obvious that I was not, because I talked about my mother. I didn't talk about the church and stuff. So yeah, I can see when you're in a high Mormon area, you need to kind of pass sometimes and do all the signaling. And then you can also use that signaling to say, hey, yeah, I'm not part of your group anymore. Much like Rebecca is with her shoulders right now.
Porn shoulders. So naughty. Bruce, I love that. And I love, first of all, that you have the same name as my father, and that you seem to have left, but you have kind of staked your place in your family.
Yeah, I'm the fun gay uncle.
And I have a lot of respect for that, the connection you've kept without shame, And anyway, I love listening to you talk about how much you've kept that connection. I'm hoping to like get there. So I really, really appreciate that about you.
Yeah,
So thank you for that.
boundaries are important, but yeah, live your life, because people will move on, and they're not thinking about you all the time. If they think they can control you, maybe, parents think about their kids trying to control them. You mentioned the no empty chair kind of thing. Yeah, that's very prevalent in Mormon society. But yeah, you move on and be happy. And yeah, I don't know, kind of interesting.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. It's pretty similar. Basically, just hell is other people. So, I think Bruce kind of illustrated this in a little bit, that I'm thinking that in order to stay out of hell with other people, everybody should have an FU moment. His was wearing a blue shirt. And I will admit, you can judge me for being a crazy CrossFitter, but it took me a full year and a half before I would wear the little booty shorts. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
There is no air conditioning in Houston when we are doing these workouts. So, I mean, it's so hot, and the little Mormon in me just couldn't do it. And it wasn't even, I'm afraid of like what Jesus will think. It was that control had shamed me to a point where I was so self-hating of my own body that I couldn't wear these booty shorts. So when I wore those booty shorts, I'll tell you, that was my big FU moment. And so now, and then I wore them in front of my parents. And
yes.
Crazy thing is, you know what? They didn't say a darn thing. They didn't care. In fact, my mom said, "What cute little skulls you have on your little shorts." Like it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. So hell is people, but sometimes people can surprise you if maybe you're true to yourself. I think they can sense that a little bit. So, yeah, I'm just going to quickly move on to the next one. We're kind of getting into more of the theologies in general. So I loved this Emerson stuff. I didn't know his history. I did not know that, he was Harvard educated and then became a pastor and then left religion. I kind of thought that was kind of heroic in a way, and this idea of the oneness with the universe, is seemingly with nature, with the things around you. I think we kind of touched on that a little bit with the idea of awe. I guess I wondered, is there anyone who like hates the outdoors? Like if you do, how do you establish this oneness with nature? Can anyone comment on that? Because I've always wondered that. Everybody's okay with trees. We're all good with the nature. Oh, okay. I mean, I wonder if that's a universal thing, right? Because I know there are some people who absolutely hate the outdoors. And I'm going, so what do they do? Because this seems kind of universal. So I don't know. If
I don't see how you can walk outside on a spring day and not just love the outdoors. Even if you don't like camping or getting dirty, just walking out on a spring morning where it's after winter and it starts to warm up and the birds are starting to be everyone. I can't think of a soul who would be turned off by that.
I hope not. I don't know them, but I'm sure they're out there. Rebecca and then Bruce.
Yeah, I think nature is a big aha moment for a lot of people as they step away from Mormonism, or even a catalyst. And it kind of was for my family. I remember we were okay doing things on Sunday as long as we also went to church and then we'd do something. So there was one Sunday where we went to a soccer game we had all boys. We went to an outdoor little soccer kind of meetup. Some of their soccer stars that they loved in Utah were there. And we were out as a family first thing in the morning. The sky was blue, the sun was shining, the grass was green, the kids were smiling. It was a beautiful morning. And then we went home and we stuffed ourselves into our church clothes. And I mean, really had to stuff the kids in, right? And we walked into that building and we looked around, no windows. We just felt the most cloistered feeling. I mean, it was palpable. And it was that moment where we just kind of went, wow, there's a huge difference, isn't there? Is there a world on Sunday? Is there something that other people do? And when you start to explore that and recognize that, it makes just the juxtaposition of the two environments and the feelings that you have made a huge difference, at least in my family, as far as saying, I want to have more experiences outdoors with family, fresh air, and it did. It kind of started this idea that, is there something else? Is there something more? Because it's absolutely palpable when you walk outside and you have those moments and you're like, I feel this and I'm not being told what I'm supposed to feel. It's not prescribed for me. It's my own feeling. And I'm in touch with something higher, something bigger. You just have that feeling of maybe being insignificant, but it doesn't bother you because you realize there's significance everywhere. So I think nature is extremely powerful in stepping away from something that you've been in your whole life, however you choose to do it, whether it's just a soccer game or it's climbing Mount Everest, whatever it is.
Yeah, I love that. I saw a thing, I think it was on Instagram, that in Japan, some physicians are now prescribing a visit to go to the forest. That's your prescription. Bruce.
Yeah, I find the ocean really pleasant. And, I don't know if I am scientifically correct in this understanding, but I think I've read where the salinity of our blood is the same salinity that's in ocean water. And as I started thinking about, okay, did we evolve from, organisms that came from the ocean? And I've read articles on swimming. I swim at an outdoor aquatic center near me at the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center. And it's got beautiful outdoor pools. They're heated to the same temperature every day of the year. And I've read articles where swimming and being in water helps your mental health. And so 4 days a week, I swim for about an hour laps. And, some of us that go there, we talk about these articles that we've seen that, it's kind of meditative and stuff. And so I think our relationship to water, and then also my understanding is that the human body needs sunshine. We need, kind of direct sunshine a bit for vitamin D. I've got, skin cancer stuff being burned off all the time because I've been out in the sun too much. But my understanding too, that even with clothes on, the different wavelengths of light, we need our body to have those for our internal organs to function. And we developed as creatures from the outdoors, and I'm sitting here in my bedroom with my office, and how, as we get older, especially, how much time do we spend indoors and at church? How much time do we spend in churches and temples and stuff where we should probably be out getting some sunlight and fresh air and stuff. So yeah, that's just kind of some of those thoughts when you talked about the outdoors and the ocean. I find just hearing it and walking along in Los Angeles, you've got just miles of bike path between like Venice and Santa Monica and stuff. And I go down there and just walk by the hour. And I find that really calming and refreshing. And it's probably, my biological body appreciating the outdoors that we evolved in.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard the similar things about water. I think I read that there was a study where they said that when you lived or were exposed to like your proximity to water was, had something to do with like your rate of happiness or calmness or something along those lines. So, and my husband and I, like he's diagnosed with PTSD. And then because of all that, they diagnosed me with secondary PTSD. Like, we're both just a really fun flavor of crazy. But we both, struggle with the anxiety and all those things. And his thing is, he goes, the only time he felt calm as a child was when they'd go to California and he's like on the beach, that ocean. And then I was a swimmer growing up, and same thing, like I thought about it and I was like, the only time my mind was calm or I didn't feel like somebody was going to be criticizing me was when I would go underwater. And so I can still swim under 25 yards underwater without coming up. but the quiet and just like nobody could talk to me, that in a really weird way, that's like the only time I felt that peaceful awe sensation,
Mhm.
you know. So yeah, and I think it's this oneness that Emerson also gets to. So I do think it doesn't have to be nature, but there seems to be something really universal about it. So maybe we should all try and seek to get outside. Maybe we should do book club under a pavilion. Like, I don't know. Someday we need to do that. Like just this annual, we're going to do a camping trip. Um, anyway, all right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so Stoicism, which I love the quotes by Seneca, and I also am a nerd and love that I think Seneca is like the character in Hunger Games. So I just thought that was cool. So again, everything seems to really be based on accepting we don't have control. That's like the epitome of all these things. But we must define our happiness not by what we own or achieve, not by how others see us, not by some bigger picture of life, but by how we think and see ourselves and live our own life through what we deem virtuous and relevant. So I've mentioned, and I still am curious if anybody struggles with it is very hard to change to making your own decisions about what's best for yourself when you were told exactly what was best for you. And I think it was Landon who said like there was things about like you would pray for answers, but if you got the wrong answer, then that was a reflection poorly on you, you know. And so how have you guys gone from having, you know, a doctrine tell you who you are to discovering within yourself who you are, what your own choices are? Is there a method to that? How did you do it, Rebecca?
I think I'll let someone else answer that exact question. Sort of another thing, I think when you leave the church when you're older, like me, 5 decades, you start revisiting all the things that you did because you were told to do them and then you didn't know to do different. And you start just imagining, you know, what could have been, or maybe what should have been. You know, I shouldn't have done this. I really was better suited to do that. Or what if I would have been able to explore this? I think there's a period that you go through and you step away when you're older, when you do that. You know, like I look back and I go, you know, I left my career to be a stay-at-home mom. I walked out of my career, you know, and maybe, and I did it for all the reasons that you were supposed to do it. Maybe it would have been better. Maybe I was more suited to do something else and, you know, have the workaround with the kids. I don't know. I think about that all the time. And where would I be now? So I think you go through this mourning period where you realize I made a lot of decisions based on what I was told to do. My major when I entered BYU was something different than what I graduated with, because I got into the program, even though I loved it, I realized, oh, I don't think this will be conducive to be a mom. And I changed it. But what if I hadn't? You know, the only reason I changed it is because how I was raised. So I think first you overcome that and you let that go, you mourn that or whatever, and realize, okay, I'm still in a good place. I can't wonder what would have been or what decision I would have married. And then you can go forward and you start realizing that, you know, you can make your own decisions. But I just wanted to mention that I think people of a certain age maybe can relate to that when you look back at all the things you did simply because you didn't know that you didn't have to do them, or you could look at them another way.
Yeah, I love that. You say of a certain age, I'm like, I don't know how old you think the rest of us are, but I went through the same grieving process.
Yeah, I know.
You
I'm looking at the 21-year-old that steps away.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, you poor dear, you're amazing. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. So
yeah, grieving what you lost is probably, yeah, accepting that, grieving it. Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. I can't remember, was it Bruce and then Landon, I think?
No, Landon first.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, it's in order. You taught me that. I forgot. Landon and then Bruce.
I was just going to say we already covered, to me, the secret, and that is you just don't care what anyone else thinks. Once you stop caring what anyone else thinks, you're free to do whatever. And it might be your family, it might be your kids, it might be, you know, all the people that are most important to you. But when you stop caring what everyone else thinks and just start caring what you think, that gives you all the permission.
You make that sound so easy.
It's not easy because I struggle with some of my kids, and stuff. We've struggled a little bit with, because they grew up, all my kids are out now, but they were all raised in the church and all raised a certain way. So it's definitely tough with my extended family, my parents and stuff, because um, they still, we taught you this or we taught you that. And it's like, yeah, but I don't care. It's not working out. It's not me. So it is hard because I don't talk with my mom a lot because of our differences in religious beliefs and stuff. I still love her, but I just have stepped back and said I don't care. And I think the older you get, the less you care what people think. So I think Rebecca is people of a certain age. The older you get, the less you realize I don't really care, what anyone else thinks, because there's always going to be someone who thinks bad of you. So you just start learning that. And podcasting helps because you get people criticizing you back all the time, and you go, "Oh, well, that's your thought, and that's my thought, and it's all good. It doesn't matter that we don't see eye to eye. It's okay. You can have different beliefs, and that's still okay."
You are very brave, but it does also sound like you embraced kind of trying new scary things, and you did get criticized and you survived, and that kind of built some resilience to what other people may say or think about you.
Yeah, absolutely. The more you get criticized, the less the more still you become against it, where you just say, "Oh, okay, that's all right."
Interesting. Because usually we tend to not put ourselves in those positions to be criticized out of fear and, kind of not trusting we can handle it. So that's cool that you overcame that. That's really interesting. Bruce.
Yeah, one interesting thing, Rebecca, you were talking about changing your major and doing something that you could be a mom. My understanding, and I get this from Reddit because I've been away from the church for 40 years now. The current president of the Relief Society was a 30-year corporate lawyer. She chose to, not prioritize her kids and stuff. I think they probably had resources enough to have, nannies and help and stuff. But she had a 30-year career, my understanding is, as a corporate lawyer. And now she's the head woman in the church, who's still less than a deacon's in power because she doesn't have the priesthood. And it just brought back, our discussions. Well, Mormonish had it and John DeLinda had it on the movie Heretic with Hugh Grant. All these things are about control. And, that's what the culture that we grew up in was interested in, is the control of our lives for the group's benefit. And at some point you've got to say, no, I'm going to do what I want to do. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, it's interesting, if I can just chime in, that I once looked up all the head women in the church, and they all had careers. There were maybe one or two that were listed as, homemakers and volunteers, but most of them have pretty high-powered careers. And yet, maybe not so much today. I think all women probably work in the church, but back in the day, that was not what you did. And yet the ones that are promoted are the ones that didn't do what the council was at the time and went ahead and had worldly success, if you can call it. So it is kind of hard to rectify when you look back and go, because I know so many women like me of my age where they stopped actually working in the workforce and they took little online jobs or tried to do things at home or got involved in MLM. They tried to keep going while they kept that role as the homemaker. And I'm happy to see women today not doing that, actually, and families working together to make it all work, because it's not just a pressure on women, it's a pressure on men too. That sole provider thing, that's not a reality.
I'm glad you state that. That's actually something coming out of this we've been working through. So my young adult years were the 2000s, the early 2000s. And I will say, even then, I very much was taught more of the prosperity doctrine, in that if I give up my career ambitions and support my husband and put him through grad school, financially, it'll all work out and my children will be fine. And, kind of that secret sauce, and so I think it still continues to a point. My oldest daughter has said that she very much felt that pressure, that there still wasn't this freedom to really explore what she wanted as an individual, because her main purpose taught to her was to be a mother and be in support of the family, not to ever embrace her own ambitions. Anyway, to bring it back to like the Stoicism, I think, we have to get rid of the things that are not helpful to define us, and the material objects, and what really truly matters. I do think there is a lot of value in, some of the family values that we were brought up with, and the value of humanity and things like that. So again, I don't want to throw all the things out, but I think we're kind of getting close to time, so I'm going to kind of flip through a couple of these last ones. Pretty similar, I found that not all of these philosophies, but being Zen, give up the things that hold you back. I was thought of anger, fear, greed, jealousy, insecurity, giving up those things to find peace and make peace with yourself and the world and the universe and all those wonderful things. Let's see. I'm just going to go to the next one anyway. And then with Taoism, I had never known anything about this stuff, so I thought it was super, super cool. But I thought this was really interesting because I'm going to make the assumption that a lot of you were taught that the natural man is an enemy to God.
Yes.
So everything you naturally felt, whether it was, your sexual attraction you naturally felt, or you're just, I want to be a rock star, or I'm a girl and I want to be a doctor, or just any of those desires, you inherently questioned that it was wrong. So you have to go back and really, really figure all that out. And so I kind of want to change that into, we need to embrace the natural state of existing as human. So the thoughts and feelings that come into my head are natural. So I need to side on the idea that they are naturally correct instead of naturally wrong. So I wondered if there's any thoughts or feelings, or were you guys raised with the whole, whatever your natural instinct is, I don't know, like you got to pray about it and see if it's a spirit, but you're naturally probably wrong. Bruce.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. I mean, sex has been a topic of our book club every year, and I think it's really healthy. But getting my head around being gay and sex, I've become very relaxed about it. And, consent is important, safety and health is important. But then beyond that, it's whatever you feel like doing. And, if you've made agreements with people that you're in a relationship with, you've got to talk about that. But, there's just, nobody cares in the end what goes on, and shouldn't. So I've come to grips with that.
Yeah, you make it sound so simple, but I'm certain that
Oh no, it's
that was
not
a
simple.
huge process. Yeah, that's been years in the making, and that's a triumph to get there.
Yeah.
Anybody else have issues with battling their natural man or embracing now your natural existence, Mark?
I don't really have problems with that, but I wanted to react on something about Taoism, because I have some friends who are from Tao. They're amazing people, and they have a real love for nature and for animals. And I saw this woman, a friend of mine had problems with ants in the house, and this woman showed the ants how to get out of the house, and they followed her. And they didn't have problems with ants anymore. But I thought, oh, it's amazing. The love they have for the natural things, for the animals, for the people. That was really an example for me.
That is really interesting. I work with several doctors that are from India, and some of them are Jain. So they're vegetarian, and they were defining a little bit of that for me and where it comes from. And they said that it's a sanctity of life thing. So if you're really, really devout, kind of a similar idea, like they will not, kill vermin that come into their homes. And they said, in poverty places in India, it causes problems because there's a lot of, disease and things that way. But I appreciated that sanctity of life. And I think that peace and that respect for life, there is this fear, and I'm curious if any of you felt this, that when you change your mind about the Mormon plan, you are left with wondering if humanity is moral. If you're going to be safe in a world of other people who don't have this same idea, is there love, is there sanctity of life, and all those things. So, Joe.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of going through that process right now. Like before, we had all the answers. We knew the right and wrongs, right? But now the question is, what is right and wrong? And I've spent time, going with the humanist side. What's the best for what's the best welfare for people and stuff like that. And like Bruce was saying, like there's a couple ones that are important, but the rest of it is like, who knows, right? And then you have to make decisions about relationships and interactions that you never had to really worry about, but now it matters, right? Like there's no right answer or wrong answer, and you don't know if it's going to be bad or good. And it's just walking into that fray of, well, okay, let's see how it goes if I do this, and if it falls apart, But no, it completely, like there's no handrails anymore, right? It's your decision, and you get to make it, and you have to live with the consequences, and it's going to be messy, and in a way that's okay, but it's hard to embrace.
Yeah, I was very scared about that just because with my early experience of, my husband was in law enforcement and there were times he was undercover. And so frankly, a lot of our dinner conversations were about human trafficking, like that's just the world he lived in. So instead of talking about, the latest report he did at work, we talked about the latest trends in drug dealing and things like that. And so you get a very jaded view of humanity. So it was very scary for me to think I was going to leave this safety net that had protected me a little bit, but it's been a phenomenal experience all around. So it's all been good things. Bruce.
Yeah, I know that Mormon parents, and I think parents in general, have a feeling of ownership of their kids. And at some point, they have to let that go. And, I came from a very stable family. I only have one niece who's kind of a little schizophrenic, but nobody's gone way out of the bounds. But you kind of got to let people have their own lives. And if they've got, drug problems or what you think are a series of poor choices, at some point you've got to kind of let that go too, because you want the ability to have your own choices and not be controlled by an organization or your family. And just, I don't have kids. I have a niece that I worry about, but she's made her own choices and is reasonably okay. Yeah, it's interesting how what we think is ours, and with parents, your kids are yours when they're small because you're responsible and you guide them. But at some point, you've got to let go, and we've got to be let go from the organizations that were bad for us. So I don't know, kind of interesting thought.
Yeah. I love that. I think after leaving, we had some experiences of trauma before, and then our home was actually burglarized 2 summers ago while we were in Utah, and it was a neighbor, and my children were targeted. The hair was cut off of my daughter's dolls. They went through underwear drawers, like just creepy stuff. And I don't think we'd actually officially stopped going. We were like super sporadic, but we were kind of trying to keep contact, like so our kids could keep their friends, sort of deal. And it was actually really comforting to go through that kind of traumatic event And it was so much easier than some of the other stuff because I did not waste mental energy trying to find the reasons. The reasons were somebody has a mental health issue and they self-medicated with illicit drugs and they invaded our home and we need to keep, my children safe going forward and we're going to do things to do that. But I didn't have to try and find some spiritual reason why all this happened. And it was so actually comforting to not even have to worry about that. And in the end, I guess I feel like I'm giving in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. My closing, I think I've learned in all of these that there are kind of some similar steps in all of these philosophies. First, I think you have to accept that you have no idea and you have no control. And you need to follow Landon and figure out how to not let what other people say or think bother you. And then you get to live a life of awe according to your own values, what you deem the most valuable in your life. And I'm very excited about the things that are to come in my life and where this can go. And I'm so glad I'm past the angry phase and I'm past the scared phase. So if anybody has any other comments, I am all done. So I appreciate it. Oh, I did an ending slide. I was so proud of myself. Hold on, look, I take a bow, you guys.
Your slides are awesome, Steph.
There we go.
Oh, they're a bow.
I was so proud of me. Okay, I'm all done. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. This was a big growth identity thing for me that I was going to get back into reading because that's all about me and not about anybody else. And so I thank you for supporting this. Oh, I'll call on Joe. I still feel like I'm in charge. Joe, go ahead. Oh,
you're just waving.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's a
Maybe
clap.
he's just giving you the.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah,
no, you're
sorry.
just amazing, Stephanie. And I have to say, this is part of my favorite part of book club is that just people who reach out who we don't know yet, we don't know and says, hey, I'll do that. And then we're like, this is going to be amazing. And then through the process of preparing for book club, we get to have a meeting ahead of time and meet Steph and learn more about her story and then have this great conversation. Book club is about books, but it's really about people. And that's our favorite part of it. And I mean, 5 years now, this is incredible. All the people that some still here from the OG days and some just cycle through because, it's true as a post-Mormon, you spend some time deconstructing and talking and processing, and then you kind of just go live your life or go outdoors on Sunday. And so we love it that we can be here for people who want to be here and people circle back or they don't. But everybody we've met has just been fantastic. And Steph, this has been absolutely incredible. I mean, the book, I think it was Yvonne said in the chat, I would not have read this except for book club. And I feel that's true of a lot of these books. Maybe you might mean to, maybe you've never heard of them. Here they are. You have a little bit of accountability that you want to read it for the book club. And then you learn all these amazing things that you maybe never would have before. So I love it. I love that aspect of it. So you did a great job, Steph. You're amazing. Thank you.
Good job.
Yay. Virtual and real clapping.
Sign language clapping. Yay.
That's right. Is that what it is? Have you learned sign language then? Because of what happened or?
So I took it in college, ironically.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But no, we have plans like that, because eventually in aging, I'm going to lose anyway, it's in the works. We do feel like our kids and our grandkids, like someday we would like them all to sign, like it's just beneficial anyway, but it's like down on the priority list right now. So.
Exactly. No, CrossFit is higher up.
No, that's so embarrassing. One cult for another, you guys.
No. Yeah. Next month's discussion, which Jackie is going to present in a couple of minutes, is going to be good.
Yeah, and everyone's going to wear booty shorts to that meeting.
Everybody wear booty. Who knows? People probably are already wearing them.
I'm wearing booty shorts already. I just won't show it.
Whatever happens below there, we don't need to know, right? Just don't stand up, for God's sake. Don't stand up.
I haven't been brave enough to do the crop top yet, but maybe next month is my month.
It's with so many strict parameters in Mormonism, how you can signal people. And I've always said, when I started podcasting that the reason I wear this is that so nobody will misunderstand where I am and what my point of view is. Because I get criticized all the time, you're too friendly, until we listen to what's coming out of your mouth. And then it's horrible from a active Mormon point of view. You know what I mean? So I always wear this to try to let people know, no, this will be my point of view and you'll hear it. I'm not ashamed. But now with the tank top garment, even this doesn't do any good. So I don't know what to wear next to signal who I am. Stay tuned, I guess. So, all right, let's go into our slides. I just got a weird thing on my computer saying my battery's running low, but it's been plugged in for like 6 months. So, all right, let's do our finishing slides here. And if I disappear, it's just because my battery died. So, okay, we just finished this and it was amazing. Our next book, Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism.
Yes.
And we're going to let Jackie right now, she is our presenter for next month, go into a little bit of a preview of this. And I think this is going to make you really want to read this book.
Yeah, this is going to be a really good book. So next month on March 9th, we're going to be looking at this book. This author has actually written she wrote another book called Word Slut, A Feminist Guide to Taking Back the English Language. Cultish was published in 2021. So it's actually a pretty new book. And she's working to develop it into television with FX. And she knows what she's talking about when it comes to language because she has a linguistic degree from NYU. So this book explores the social science of the influence of cults by focusing on the power of words and language. Through interviews and personal stories, including that of her father, who was a member of the group Synanon, she breaks the book into 6 parts, and each one kind of focuses on different things. So in part 1 is called Repeat After Me. And in that section, the author we're going to explore the language around cults, including the way we define cult and the evolution of the word. Part 2, I want to put a trigger warning for this one because it's called Congratulations, you have been chosen to join the next evolutionary level above human. But here the author takes us through the famous cults that unalive themselves, including Jonestown and Heaven's Gate. Part 3, Even You Can Learn to Speak in Tongues. Here we're going to delve into religious cults, Scientology, Children of God, and I think we're going to find some uncomfortable parallels here. Go ahead. Part 4, do you want to be a #boss babe? In this section, the author looks at MLMs, multi-level marketing, which we know is all the thing in LDS life, specifically how they utilize cultish language and tactics. And again, I think this part will resonate with us. Here's where Steph was talking about. Part 5, this offer is going to change your life and make you look awesome. Here, we're going to look at fitness cults such as SoulCycle and CrossFit and how they are the same and different. And then part 6, Follow for Follow. This section looks at the influence of social media. And so I think there's going to be a lot for us to get into next month. I'm very excited to have a discussion. That's it. I'm done.
Okay, where's Rebecca at?
Her computer probably died.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so then Landon, do you want to take over?
Yeah, I'll take over. Yep. Okay. Appreciate that, Jackie. It's going to be a good book, looks like. So excited to get that. Everyone get that book. We've also just remember that all the podcasts are put on the Good Book podcast, which is just limited to the book club members here. You just look up on YouTube if you want to watch it. It's the Good Book Club for Post-Mormons. We also have just the audio version of the Good Book Club. So you can look there. Also, there's the Good Media Club that talks about films, documentaries, TV, movies. If you want to look at that. And then we've also got Mormonish if you want to listen in a lot of the book club things, discussions we either make later into, some of the presentations into Mormonish. Contact information, if you want to join, some of you were new, it sounds like, you can email Rebecca at the Good Book Club at mail.com, not Gmail, at mail.com. Also, you can go to the Good Book Club Facebook page and ask to join, or go to Instagram and ask to join if you haven't. Check for spam. The mail is check your spam box sometime because it comes from mail. It throws it into a spam box. So if you're not hearing back, go ahead and check that out. So that will bring us to the end of the book club portion.